It's Jay from ASMR for Nerds. Today, I'm going to do something that I've spoken about several times before, which was eventually reading this book to you guys. Now, the reason why I chose this, or why I planned to read this, is because it is my absolute favorite Superman story ever written, that I've read. And that's even taking into account classics like For All Seasons, All-Star Superman, even Death of Superman, which I've always loved, which, has mixed reviews. There is a reason why I chose this book today, and that is because Darwin Cook, the writer of this, who is also a very well-respected comic book artist, has passed away a few days ago at the age of 52. And it's funny, last year at Comic-Con, I was online to meet him, and the line was pretty long, and I stepped off and said, I'll see him next year. And so that's a big regret. He is one of my favorite artists, top 5, I'd say. Now this book, he did not draw it. It was actually drawn by Tim Sale, who is one of my favorite artists. So this team up of two artists that I love, one of them happening to be the writer, that's the reason why I initially picked this up. I did not know anything about the story at that point.
An unpleasant duty has been masterly performed, Joel. They have received the fate they deserve. Isolation in the phantom zone, an eternal living death.
A chance for life, nonetheless. As opposed to us, it's suicide. No, it's worse. It's genocide.
Be warned, Joel.
Open here, we've got our creators. So we have Jerry Siegel and we have Joe Shuster. So Shuster was the artist and Jerry was the writer. And the first bit, it just kind of talks about inspiration they had from other things going on around them, but the biggest thing is they hadn't really seen a character like this done, and so they were very adamant about getting Superman published. So there's a version out there, I'm not sure if this was a short story or not, but where basically there's an evil Superman. He's got tons of powers and stuff. He's not exactly the same as the Superman we know, but this is like evil and kind of not good looking Superman here. And I'm trying to see if there's some sort of byline about it here to read large chunks or anything like that. But it seems completely different than the later incarnation. So yeah, I'm not sure where this was printed actually. And then we see this here. This is the Superman. This was something that was never published, so this was a concept. Never saw the light of day, but definitely much closer to the Superman we know.
The introductions, but I'm going to today, because it is an introduction written by Darwin Cook. And I did not read this before I read the stories, because I read the stories initially in issue form. So let's get started with the introduction by Darwin Cook. It's probably best to cop it to it right off the top. Superman is tough, not in the bend steel in his bare hands way. Although he is that, I'm talking about writing the guy. For close to 70 years, I don't know how to say that word, cadre of creative teams have been spinning Superman yarns. In that time, practically every imaginable story idea and character turn has been rolled out. Now let's add the fact that our boy is invulnerable, and you can't really hurt him. While we're at it, let's throw in a restrictive continuity stream that Harvard researchers would find daunting. Not a lot of room to move with, is there? When we began to discuss this project, I was apprehensive about becoming involved because I wasn't sure what I had to say about the character. Even the caveat that I could go back into Superman's rich history and tell a story from his past didn't help. Let me also point out here that I have no idea what is going on month to month in Superman's life. Continuity is retconned so often that I had no idea going into this project what the status quo of the character was. As I began to cast about for a story from Superman's past, the one thing that kept leaping out at me was the dreaded word kryptonite. Long considered an overused gimmick, kryptonite had been quietly downplayed in Superman stories since the early 70s. It struck me as an opportune time to reintroduce the deadly metal to readers, and it played quite neatly into the notion that this was to be a story about a key point in Superman's life. This brings us to continuity. I'm sure people assume I have a problem with overwrought continuity, and they'd be right. With yearly retcons and events, the status quo of the DC universe changes constantly. What was true last year may not be true this year, depending on which way the editorial team is directing the ship. When I got into comic book storytelling, it was to tell stories that would stand the test of time. I quickly realized that in order to do that, I would have to stay on the fringes of the DC universe, working on projects where continuity wasn't a critical issue. Still, continuity is unavoidable to a degree, and I had to decide for myself how I would address it. Over the course of planning New Frontier, I came up with the approach I've used ever since. I would do the projects that reflect the classic versions of the characters and strictly observe the original continuities set up by the architects of the character. This isn't meant to discount the thousands of incredible books that have been produced since modern continuity was established, as much as to put my work in a category that would keep it valid despite the current monthly continuity stream.